18 жовтня продовжує.
It's October 18. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation. My name is Svetlana Chaparenko, and now we will be talking to Natalia, Humeniuk, head of the United Coordinated Press Center of Security and Defense Forces of the south of Ukraine, and we will be talking about the current situation in the south of Ukraine. Good afternoon, Miss Natalia. Good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. So the latest news is Ukraine finally got ATACMS missile. We used them successfully, and we are happy about the results of the strike. So how do these missiles change the situation in the front lines? Well, it's obvious what is being talked about by the military and not quite clearly understood by the civilians, and even the journalists sometimes get offended about that it would intensify our counter-offensive, because the main component of the counteroffensive is the destruction of the enemy capabilities in the rear, which would allow us to make more decisive steps along the front lines in terms of our advancement. We understand that lately the enemy intensified the use of aviation. It was clear that we need to inflict strikes on those areas which support those capabilities. So the result is obvious for the time being. We've got a limited number of these missiles for the time being, so what is it in your opinion? Is it the testing of our capabilities by the partners, and should we wait for the supply of more missiles like that with the increased range? Well, we have to understand that the diplomatic things is not a prerogative of the military. What is agreed about is not something that we are aware of, but we are happy about every single such missile coming to us, and we should exercise this opportunity the most efficient possible. All of them will be launched in the right direction, be sure about that. Well, fortunately, Russian Federation was not inflicting strikes on Ukraine for a prolonged period. Do you see it as an indicator of the enemy's preparation for yet another massive strike? I always tell the people during the long-term full-scale invasion not to lose their vigilance. When people say like a massive missile strike is a strike, but when it's one missile, so they kind of neglect it. Please understand that today's strike on Zaporizhia was not a massive strike, but it was very powerful, and it destroyed an apartment block. Daily strikes on Kherson with use of the guided aviation bombs, they are not massive strikes, but they're still very intense. So don't lose sense. Every strike, whether with the use of missiles, drones, mortars, anything, MLRS, is the loss of lives, of health, economic loss and damage. So we have to realize it for ourselves that every attack of the enemy is the act of terrorism, which should be condemned by the global community, and it requires counteraction on our end. We have to be ready that the enemy may grow their missile potential, they may use mixed attacks. They were trying these tactics before. And our task is to prepare our air defense capabilities and to play beforehand, maybe even using that very same ATACMS missiles. We have information that the enemy intensified the training of their pilots in the Black Sea Basin. Can you confirm this information, and if it is true, then why? Well, we don't observe any activity by the enemy for the time being. Miss Natalia, we've lost the sound. We're not hearing you. Can you hear us? Can you hear me now? Yes, you're back on. So we don't observe any such activities in the Black Sea Basin. However, we think that they can still try such maneuvers to reorient the threat of the air ballistic missiles such as Kinjal to other regions. Previously, we were saying that they were trying to inflict more strikes on the capital, and it was more of a threat to so-called center of decision-making, as they call it. Now, when Ukraine is trying to take its place in the grain initiative, the ports and port terminals may become the key targets for the enemy. What is your characteristic of the situation in the Black Sea and along the shore? Well, the situation remains stable. The enemy continues staying in the region that the enemy still deems as safe, from the eastern bank of Crimea to Novorossiysk. However, they wrapped up the group of their ships in the Black Sea and Azov Sea basins. Obviously, it happened after the intense storm, when somehow their ships ended up in the open sea, and it's clear that now they went back to the ports for resupply. Also, yesterday there was still a missile carrier in the open sea, which is back to the port, which still doesn't cancel the missile threat, because we remember that they may launch the sea-based missiles from the base of Novorossiysk. They already have such experience. This is why the General Staff assesses the missile threat as high. However, with the remark that there are no missile carriers on active duty in the open sea. Still, we also document the activities of the tactical aviation of the enemy in the Black Sea basin. They continue terrorizing the seaways by dropping guided aviation bombs or other explosive devices or mines. That is one way when the group of ships cannot achieve that area, but with the use of aviation they still try to disrupt the operation of grain corridor. Thank you very much. I will give an opportunity to our journalists on the floor to ask their questions. Good afternoon, Anastasia Rakuta, Ukrinform. Miss Natalia, can you please tell us whether there is the information about the losses of the enemy in airfield in Berdyansk, and also do you observe any Russian ships entering the port of Mariupol, and if so, in what numbers? Well, globally we don't have any such observations in the sea. However, we sometimes document the entrance of civil trade ships that enter the port of Mariupol for the purposes of marauding. What they can marauder, either metal, scrap or grain, they load everything on those ships. However, the weather is still not so favorable, but we do document such facts from time to time. The facts of ships entering Mariupol, from where they steal grain. Talking about the losses in the Berdyansk airfield, it's not our area of responsibility. I think that Tavrian sector will provide relevant comments, but there is the fact of damage using the type of weapon is something that we are aware about. A lot of army aviation, which means helicopters, are damaged or destroyed over there. Thank you for commenting on the situation in the south of Ukraine. I'm reminding you, joining us was Natalia Humeniuk, head of the United Coordinating Press Center of Security and Defense Forces of the south of Ukraine. Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform will continue its operation tomorrow. Thank you for staying tuned.